Hello everyone and welcome to a football video. Yes, I haven't done a football video in quite a while, probably to the extent that many of you who recently subscribed probably had no idea that I was a big football fan, but I am, and I thought what better way to start doing more football based content than to speak about the Euros, or more specifically England's chances at the Euros. Now the Euros is right around the corner, less than a week away at time of recording, so I thought I'd speak about England and their chances at the Euros, because obviously, it's a bit of an interesting situation because England haven't really done that well at tournaments recently, but obviously they did reach the semi-finals of the World Cup in a weird tournament where England came fourth with a pretty terrible squad. And now all of a sudden they're expected to do better than that because they've got a much better squad. England have a squad that has a lot of really good, young, exciting players that really look like they're going places. They've got heaps of talent, particularly in the forward areas. So naturally you'd expect them to improve upon what they did at the 2018 World Cup. Although the thing is about the 2018 World Cup is that they were underdogs. They had a terrible squad, a squad that flipping Phil Jones and Danny Welbeck made it into. Loftus-Cheek started games. That tells you how bad that squad was. Yet Gareth Southgate somehow pulled a miracle out of the bag and got England to the semi-finals when far more talented squads had never been able to accomplish that. But now all of a sudden England aren't the underdogs anymore. All of a sudden they're expected to do things, because you look at the other nations and their squads and England's squads, and England easily could be top 5 squads in the tournament, at least top 6, top 7 for sure, but I'd even say maybe top 5, because England have a really good squad, as I said, especially in the forward areas, with good young talent who would get into most of those other squads. So therefore Gareth Southgate all of a sudden now has a selection dilemma, and now all of a sudden has to pull something out of the bag when it is expected of him, which makes this tournament particularly interesting. Now England aren't going into this tournament in all strengths. I think they are quite weak at centre back still. It's probably the only position that they're not really blessed in quality, and obviously that's not really helped by the injury to Maguire, which is obviously not great, and it's not really sure when he'll be fit. It's unsure if he'll miss the first game. He probably will. He may even miss the second game. Obviously Henderson is also injured, although he could be fit for the first game, but he'll definitely be fit for the second game. Also, Alexander-Arnold also unfortunately pulled out of the squad through injury after pulling up injured in the warm-up game against Austria a couple of nights ago, which is a massive shame. I'm a big fan of Trent and I'm a Liverpool fan, so I was devastated to see him pull out. And for me, Trent easily would have started for England. I know many people say that maybe he shouldn't, but he would have been one of the first names on the team sheet for me, because I just think he's such a quality player. He's easily top 3 right-backs in the entire world, so to not have him start, you know, just wouldn't have been on for me. So it's a massive shame that he's obviously missing out, and obviously Henderson and Maguire are facing a late race to be fit. So obviously that's not great that England have some players injured, but I still feel as if England still have a strong enough squad to do something at this tournament. But I think that all depends on not only the performance of the players obviously, but Southgate himself and how he sets the team up, because Southgate is a defensive manager. People moaned about Sam Allardyce, but I said to my dad that Southgate is essentially just a Waitrose Sam Allardyce. You know, he looks the part, he acts progressive by bringing young players, but realistically, Southgate is just a defensive coach who just wants stability and isn't really progressive in terms of his style of play, which is a shame, because I think with the players that England have, they really need to be playing attacking football, because they really could. You know, if you look at England in that squad and you put them, just imagine them as like an actual football club, like in the Premier League or something, they'd easily be playing attacking football with the wealth of attacking talent they have. So it's a shame to almost waste that attacking talent on playing defensive football And that worked. It worked being solid and trying to score goals on penalties and set pieces at the 2018 World Cup, because they had a much weaker squad with not so much good attacking talent. But obviously that is different. In the years since the 2018 World Cup, clubs have been bringing in young English players through their academies, and these good attacking players have really made names for themselves. So ultimately now Southgate has a dilemma with so much attacking talent, and it will be a shame to see him waste that on defensive football. And it seems like Southgate subscribes to the philosophy that England aren't very good, or not necessarily that they're not very good, but we're so used to England not really achieving much at tournaments that we kind of perceive most of the big nations as above England, and we're lesser than them. So if we were to play France, Germany, Portugal, Spain, we'd have to play defensive, we'd have to allow them to have more of a possession and catch them out on set pieces and catch them on the break, that kind of thing, which works if you don't have a great squad. Like that worked at the 2018 World Cup, but you look at the squad, which I'll be honest, I think England's squad is on par with the Spanish squad this year, then really England should be taking the game to certain countries. They should be playing on the front foot, having more possession, dominating the game, and not just, being a coward and, playing on the back foot and trying to nick a win. Because they've got the attacking talent, they've got the quality and squad to easily win against a number of teams. Like, would I put my money on England beating Spain? No, but I think it would be a fair match, and I think England easily could win. And then you're looking at the first game of the group against Croatia, and I'd say, yes, Croatia did well at the 2018 World Cup, but you look at, things, Rakitic is obviously retired, Modric is getting older, Mandzukic, I don't even know if he starts for Croatia anymore, but obviously he's getting on. Obviously Dejan Lovren's still at the back, the world's best. But yeah, you look at their squad, and it's not a great squad. Like, it's a good squad, but England have a better squad. But would you be surprised if Gareth Southgate didn't set up against Croatia perceiving England as the worst team, even though England are probably better than Croatia? Because he would set up defensive, and he would, have less possession and allow Croatia to dominate, and that's just not what should be happening. When you've got such a golden generation, I don't want to use that term because it's been used on England squads in the past, and obviously they didn't do much, but a golden generation, for lack of a better term, of players here, you need to be dominating, because you can. You have the squad to do it, and if you're just going to defend and pretend that you're worse than most of the big teams even though you're not, then you're not going to get anywhere. It's the same reason why people get sick of people like Mourinho recently at big clubs, because, for example, or even, Tottenham, this example, it's not strictly Mourinho, but it was literally the game after Mourinho was sacked. The Carabao Cup final, Man City v Tottenham. And I was watching it with my dad, and he was just saying, why are Tottenham letting Man City have all of the ball and really not trying to attack? They're playing so defensively, playing like they're such a worse team, and that's not a big club mentality. Tottenham are a decently big club. You need to be trying to have at it with Man City, not just letting them dominate and hoping you can nick a win on penalties or something. Like, no, and it's the same with England. You need to dominate teams and really need to play that style of football, and unfortunately Southgate just isn't a coach that really seems like he wants to do that. He's a coach that prefers defensive stability, and you can even say, who were they playing, like San Marino, Kosovo or someone like that, when he played three defensive midfielders in Henderson, Rice and Phillips? Like, what the hell even is that? That's not something you should be doing. So I have worries about Southgate and how he's going to line up. People are worried that he might play a back five, which on paper I don't have an issue with. It can be a very creative formation. If you play a back three and then your wing backs essentially become midfielders, they can be very creative. And if you play a holder and an attacker in the midfield, just in between those wing backs, and that can be an incredibly creative formation. But if you have a back three rather as a back five and play the wing backs very defensive and have two holders, that's an incredibly defensive formation. So I'd understand why people are worried that Southgate might play that, because yeah, if we played that defensively against Croatia, then come on, you can't win a tournament by being that defensive. You've got to be confident in your play and try and dominate teams, because that's how you're going to be one of the best teams. And England are one of the best teams, but it feels like Southgate doesn't really believe that, and you have to believe if you're going to want to win a tournament. So I am a bit worried about the style of play. Although seeing them against Austria, he started a 4-2-3-1, which is obviously quite an attacking formation. So if you play something like that, or a 4-3-3, then I think that would be, better, because there's more potential to be attacking and dominate teams. Or even if he plays 5 at the back, but, as I said it, having the wing backs attacking, having a holder and an attacker in the midfield, then that's quite a creative formation. I'd have no issue with that. I think that just the worry is that Southgate's going to be really defensive and just have a small nation mentality rather than a big nation mentality and waste this attacking talent, then England aren't going anywhere in this tournament. And I have worries about Southgate, but judging on this next game, he could play more attacking, although I have the feeling that when it comes down to it, he will be defensive against Croatia, which is a shame because I think England are better than Croatia, but it is what it is. However, what would I do then in the first game? England have a wealth of players in this squad, and I think the team they should set up in the first game isn't necessarily their best team, because I think that the wingers in particular aren't their best wingers in terms of form, but ultimately you need to go for experience, I think, in this first game. So here's my team. In goal, you've got Pickford. I'd put him in ahead of Dean Henderson just because of his experience. He's never let England down. He's a terrible keeper in the league. I would have replaced him with Pope months ago, but Pope is injured, and ultimately at this stage of the tournament you've got to play Pickford because Henderson's too inexperienced at this level. And I'd play a back 3, and now this is on the assumption that Maguire won't make the first game, because hypothetically, if everyone's fit, the first game I'd play Pickford, a back 4 of Alexander-Arnold, Stones, Maguire and Chilwell, a midfield 3 of Henderson, Rice and Mount, and then a forward line of Sterling, Kane and Rashford. Now obviously Alexander-Arnold is out of the squad now, and obviously Maguire he probably won't make the first game. So if we are going to do that, I don't think England have good enough centre-backs in reserve to just pop them in a back 4. Mings and Cody, I don't know, I just don't think they're good enough to play in a back 4. Cody primarily plays in a back 3, and Mings, I don't know, I just don't think Mings is good enough to play there on a regular basis. He's an okay centre-back, but he's not quite, starting at a major tournament level regularly for me. So I'd go to a back 3 just for more solidity, and play Walker in a back 3, which is going to happen anyway, but play Walker in a back 3, alongside Cody and Stones. The reason I'd play Cody ahead of Mings if Maguire doesn't make it in this back 3 is purely because A, he's experienced in playing in a back 3, he's played in there for many years for Wolves, even though Wolves and himself haven't really been great in terms of form this season, he's experienced in playing in a back 3. I'd be tempted to play him on the left because Stones usually plays in the middle, but then again he plays in the centre of a back 3 for Wolves, so I'd be tempted to play him there. It doesn't really matter. But another reason, not just because he plays in a back 3, but also Cody is club captain for Wolves, and he's a leader. He commands a back 3, he's always shouting at players, he's passionate, and therefore you need a leader in that back 3 in the absence of Maguire, and I feel like Cody would do that job a lot better than Tyrone Mings. Although Mings would probably be better at playing on the left side of a back 3, because I'm pretty sure he plays left centre back for Villa. I know he used to be a left back when he used to play for Bournemouth back in the day. But yeah, Mings, you could argue, might be better on the left if you were to position Stones in the centre as he did at the 2018 World Cup with Maguire on the left. But oh no, I think Cody is just better suited for a back 3. Then for my midfield 4 or 2 midfielders with the wing backs, obviously, I go Trippier, Henderson, Mount and Chilwell. If Henderson doesn't make the first game, then I'd just pop in Rice, it's a like for like change there. The reason I play Trippier is obviously you're playing Walker in the back 3, Arnold doesn't make the squad now because he's injured, and I think Trippier is just better than James. James is good, and I almost went for James because he's used to playing in a back 5 now because he's played it quite recently under Tuchel at Chelsea, and he's used to obviously playing wing back. But I don't know, I think Trippier is just better at this moment in time, but I'd have no issues with rotating Trippier and James depending on the opposition. Then my two midfielders would be Henderson and Mount. As I said, playing two holders, that would be quite defensive, because I know some people want to play Henderson or Rice, or even Rice and Phillips if Henderson doesn't make it. I say some people, Southgate is who I'm talking about here. That's just far too defensive. I know it's Croatia, they're a good side, but England are a good side. You don't want to be playing that and playing two holders, because there's no creativity there. So I'd play Henderson there because obviously he's a leader, and you know, Henderson, he's one of the first names on the team sheet if he's fit. The real England captain. I know Kane's the captain, but Henderson's that leader in there that I think Kane sometimes lacks the leadership that Henderson has. Southgate said it himself that even if he doesn't play in some of the games, he'd take him because of his leadership in the dressing room. Henderson's just that type of player, and obviously he's great at being defensive midfielder, and he can get forward, as we know, for Liverpool, and cover in the spaces. He's just a great player to have in there. And obviously Mount, brilliant this season. You know, he's played wing, but I think for England he'd probably be better playing a bit deeper, mainly because of the variety of wingers there. But yeah, I think he'd be great pairing alongside Henderson. Henderson the more defensive, Mount the more attacking. Mount can run in and score burst from that midfield. I think it would really work. And Chilwell, it was a toss-up between Chilwell and Shaw, because I think for this game you need to be a bit more defensive in your wing-backs. I know I said don't go for defensive, but what I mean is you still don't need to be raging forward. Part of me were to play Saka, just because he played brilliant against Austria, and also I think Saka would struggle to get into the team as a winger, just because of the amount of wingers England have. So I'd probably, if we're playing a back five, play him as a wing-back, at left wing-back, where he has played for Arsenal, but obviously that's quite attacking. He'd obviously be very creative, but obviously that is quite attacking. So for solidity, I'd go for Chilwell or Shaw, and I think Chilwell just edges Shaw for me. I know most people will put Shaw in, and he has had a good season, but I don't know, I just fancy Chilwell more, and he's played in a back five like James for Chelsea. I know I didn't start James, but I don't know, I just start Chilwell. He's a bit more conservative, but I think for other games against the Scots and against the Czech Republic, I would be tempted to start Saka there if we were playing a back five still. And then obviously the front three, Sterling, Kane, Rashford. I know lots of people want to start Foden, lots of people want to start Sancho. The reason I wouldn't do it in this first game is just experience. Sterling, Kane, Rashford is an experienced front line, and I think you wouldn't want to chuck Foden in just for this opening game. Even though Foden is easily one of England's best players on form and potential wise, I think Sterling, Kane, Rashford, despite the fact Sterling isn't in great form, he scored a lot of goals for England, I'd start him in this first game. Yeah, I just think you need that experience in the forward line, and then I would probably start Foden against Scotland, depending on the performances in the first game, because he needs to start some games, Foden. He's an extremely exciting prospect and has been brilliant for Manchester City, but I think you just need solidity in that forward line against Croatia. But then, when you're playing, I think it's Scotland in the second game, I could be wrong, I think it's Scotland and not Czech Republic. If Maguire isn't fit, I'd probably play the same team, depending on performances. But I would put Foden in for either Sterling or Rashford, depending on who plays worse, and I'd probably put Saka in ahead of Chilwell, just for that more creative and energetic and attacking wing-back, presuming England would have most of the ball. Now, some of you may be thinking, what about Grealish or Sancho? To me, Grealish, I think, would be a great impact player from the bench. Grealish is a player I think is really good. I really do rate Grealish, although it's hard to put him into this England team to start. I can see him as a player who comes off the bench, performs well, and maybe earns himself some starts later on in the tournament because of his good form in the group stage. But yeah, I don't see Grealish as someone to start, but I think he's the type of player who could really come off the bench and make an impact. Sancho's a difficult one because he's been in great form for Dortmund, but I just don't really know if he has enough about him to really position him ahead of Foden and Grealish. Grealish is who I take off the bench. Foden is the most likely one to disrupt that front three for me. Sancho's been great, and I think me not really regularly watching the Bundesliga at all is probably why I don't quite rate him as highly as others, which is purely on my part. You know, I just haven't seen enough of him. Which is obviously on my part, that's no fault of Sancho's, but you know, it's just something. So it's hard to say where Sancho would come in, but he would start some games. I'll probably start him in the third game, but yeah, it's hard to say where he'd come in, but I'm not sure I'd start him. Certainly not against Croatia. And yeah, obviously Rice, I'd say when Maguire comes back, if he comes back, I presume he would come back, then I switch to a 4-3-3, depending on the performances in the group stage. If they're brilliant with the 3-4-3, then maybe stick with it, but I think 4-3-3 is just better, suits England's players a bit more. So if Maguire comes in, then obviously Maguire in for Cody, and then it's just an easy switch, Rice in for Walker. Yeah, so Declan Rice, I do like Declan Rice. If you were playing a 3-4-3, he'd start ahead of Henderson if Henderson was injured. Presuming that Henderson will be fit, then Rice would miss out, purely because two holders, I think, would just be a bit excessive, and I think Henderson is better than Rice. But yeah, Rice would still get a good amount of game time, and if we're switching to a 4-3-3, Rice would start. I think I've covered a lot of positions, or at least a lot of positions that, you know, would be in contention to start. There's obviously people who I don't think will really start regularly, people like Bellingham, people like Mings, although you could rotate him and Cody, depending on how long Maguire is out. People like Reece James, I'd start in certain games. Again, I'd be open to rotating him with Trippier, and the same with Shaw and Chilwell, although I would throw Saka into that mix because I think he could be a really creative wing-back. But if you play 4-3-3, then obviously Shaw rotating with Chilwell and have Saka more as a winger. In terms of who I'd take the place of Arnold, I'd put Ward-Prowse in because I think they're really desperate for bodies in that midfield. They've not got many central midfielders in the squad, and lots of people are putting in Lingard, and on form I understand it. I do feel sorry for Lingard. He's been in brilliant form. They've just got too many wingers, and too many wingers who I think are probably better than Lingard, even though on form he's probably one of the most informed England players. So I think Lingard would miss out. I understand why people want to put him in because of his form, but I just think you don't need Lingard. I think Ward-Prowse would just be more important to have in that squad. So there you go, that's how I'd line up England. I certainly want them to be playing attacking football, taking the game to teams, and I think they have the squad to do it. They've got some really exciting players, and I think they still have a strong squad, regardless of the injuries. I think all it really depends on is just Southgate, what style of play he wants to set up, and, you know, who he plays, what formation, and obviously, as I said, the style of play. If he goes defensive, if he plays defensive, I can't see England doing anything at this tournament. But if he plays to England's strengths, then honestly, I can see this England team going really far. But yes, thank you guys for watching this video. Again, a little bit of a different one. I haven't done a football video in a while. I think the last football video I did was my predictions for the Premier League season. So, Jesus, it's been quite a while. I was tempted to do more football content, more coverage of the Premier League. I was really tempted to do a rant video on Liverpool, particularly at certain points, judging on how bad they were at points last season. I never got around to doing it, but I do want to do more football-based content because I'm really into football, but you probably won't know that if you watch my channel, because I don't do any football content. It's probably on a par of Doctor Who to me, maybe not quite as much as Doctor Who, but it's certainly my second love, probably even ahead of Marvel or Star Wars. So yeah, I do really like football. I would like to cover it more on my channel. I think some of it is just subconsciously, I know it wouldn't get the views of like a Doctor Who news video, so I sometimes go against it, but perhaps if I make more videos, I build up an audience, you may see more football based content from me. I may do more videos on the Euros, depending on if there's anything to say, maybe more videos on England. I am planning to do a video on my Premier League predictions and reacting to my terrible predictions I did in that original predictions video now the season is over, so stay tuned for that. And if you're not really into football, don't worry, because I've got a variety of other content. I'm still making Doctor Who videos. I've got a couple of Doctor Who videos, one on the Roof Doctor and one on an underrated Tom Baker story that have taken me ages to edit. And that's just because I'm putting more time into editing them, putting lots of clips in, making the editing better, presenting them in a video essay style, presenting a video that, yes, takes a lot more time, but also is something that I'm more happy with as a product. So I hope you guys don't mind that. That's why videos have been slightly slower recently. And yes, stay tuned for those Doctor Who videos if you come to my channel for that. But if you want to see more football content, that is around the corner as well. But yes, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you've got any thoughts on England or how they should line up or how you think they'll do at the tournament or just the Euros in general, drop it down in the comment section. I'd love to talk about it and have a discussion. But thank you guys for watching, and of course, a goodbye.